Okay, we're back again here in the glass bead game. Again, the camera is fixed now, so we should be able to make more videos going forward. I want to review the 6 books that I did here as part of this glass bead game Divine Artist series. Um, Again, my name is Mark Megna. I've done 6 books, and they are all interpretations of Parmenides. They're a takeoff on Hermann Hesse's The Glass Bead Game, the Magister Ludi, the Master of the Game, and they've all sought this immortality of love, truth, beauty, and perfection. And it's all this study of metaphysics, and it has nothing to do with necessarily the real world that we live in, or have any productive use in the real world necessarily, but it's all just this intellectual discussion as sort of a hobby. And the first book that I wrote was called Metaphysics of Being, Something from Nothing. Again, my name is Mark Megna. The cover there, you have big pieces of reality, smaller pieces, and then even smaller, all going down into an infinite regress. These are Ford circles, and it's kind of a takeoff on M.C. Escher's Escher tilings of how a finite image could contain an infinite amount of images. So in this book, this was kind of an interpretation of Parmenides, this discussion of why is there anything at all, and does God exist, and what's the meaning of existence, and the discussion of something and nothing, being and not being, life and death, and eternity, and kind of a book about everything. And a lot of it is kind of mathematical in nature. I kind of visualize things in a mathematical way. I went through Zeno's paradoxes. Zeno's paradoxes is in all 6 books. He proved that the world is discrete, that we live in. Everything is discrete and limited. We view the world in discrete, limited, chopped up concrete events in our mind and in space and time. Everything since the Big Bang has been this discrete chopping up of the world, limited view of the world, and that's how we experience the world, in this cinematic view. All of these still shots create the ultimate reality of which we live in. We live in a world of continuous motion, but at its foundation is really these discrete, non-moving units, as paradoxical as that is. Just on the back of this book explains how something comes from nothing. It is one of the most amazing books you'll ever read, if you can truly get your mind wrapped around it. It takes quantum mechanics and many mathematical paradoxes and explains how they relate to being at its most fundamental level. It does not hold back on its conclusion, regardless of how hard the reader may find to accept it. And Parmenides was the same way. Parmenides lived back in around 500 BC, and he believed in just one immutable, unchanging reality at the foundation of all being, and that being had to always exist, and not being is not possible. So that actually something could not come from nothing. So that was his overriding truth of the entire universe, and that was a paradoxical to the way that we experience the world. Through the use of our senses, we view the world in a completely different way. So that was the first book. The second book was House on the Hill, and this really is when the glass bead game was born for myself, in that there's about 100 or 75 of the initial glass bead game members that were itemized in this book, and their influence on it. In Hermann Hesse's The Glass Bead Game, Joseph Knecht was able to study at Castalia, where he synthesized mathematics and music and metaphysics into one ultimate perfect reality. So I took off on this idea and created this house on a hill where I could study metaphysics and study all of these ideas of these great minds throughout human history. And the subtitle of this book was A Metaphysical Journey into the Glass Bead Game. And just on the back of the book, this book is a compilation of the greatest minds and ideas of all time incorporated into one synthesis known as the Glass Bead Game, located in the house on the hill. It is a living I Ching in which to inspire future Magister Ludi, masters of the game, to create future artistic and intellectual thoughts of perfection. So that was the beginning of it. I recently reread this book, and I think it turned out pretty good. I wasn't that happy with it initially when I did it, and it quickly inspired a third book, which I'll get to. But I went through it again, and it is pretty involved, pretty detailed into a lot of the paradoxes of about existence and God and why is there anything at all. And some of the initial members in this book, and I've got them listed on the board here: Hermann Hesse, Ayn Rand, Alan Watts, Plato, Parmenides, Zeno, Douglas Hofstadter, who wrote Gödel, Escher, Bach, which is also synthesizing all of these mathematics and art and music into one perfect reality, and this attempt at creating a self out of and meaning from meaningless constituents, and somewhat this paradox that we've talked about so many times. Aristotle and Anaxagoras, Bertrand Russell, Kurt Gödel, Werner Heisenberg. Quantum mechanics is so important in a lot of this. George Cantor, Infinity and Mathematics. F.H. Bradley, who pursued absolute truth. And all those are in the house on the hill and just kind of a reference book. And there's about 75 guys listed in here, and a small contribution that they had to my glass bead game. Now the list of my glass bead game members has expanded to about 251. I keep finding more interesting people to add and study about. The third book, called The Ontology Dialogues, and this is a collapsing star on the cover. I did get a tattoo of this on my back. It took 5 hours, and hurt like hell to get this tattoo on my back. And this is when I started using dialogue, and a dialogue with all of the glass bead game members, and they have dialogues over just taking from table of contents: what is the self, why is there anything at all, what is the nature of the God, mind, time, space, quantum mechanics, free will and determinism, atomism, purpose versus nihilism, reality, why does evil exist, such a big question that we always go back to, and a lot of other topics that are in here. And I recently read this book as well, and I'm pretty happy how this turned out as well. I wasn't that happy when I did it. This was the third book. All of the books I've written in about 3 or 4 days each of non-stop typing and work, and just off the top of my head, and I don't do a lot of editing or proofing or anything. Here's a picture of myself on the back when I was in Rome, that I put on the back. But after going through it again, I do like it. It turned out better than I thought. It is the transcendent Platonic forms: beauty, truth, mathematical laws, art, Shiva, God, love, free will, music, Greek gods, infinity, oneness, nothingness, and all of the subjective qualities that can't be quantified that produces consciousness, reality, and ultimate meaning. The eternal fabric of consciousness itself is built into nature at its foundation. So that was the third book. So this has all been a quest over the last 2 to 5 years, especially in the last couple of years, that I've really taken off on this idea of using this as a hobby of mine called this glass bead game. The fourth book is called Being in Time, kind of taken from Heidegger's Being and Time. And again, this is dialogue. This book is in color. This book actually sells for about $72, believe it or not. Another picture of me at the Vatican on the back. You can get the ebook for about $3. All the books are for sale at Barnes & Noble, Amazon.com. The publisher again was Ex Libris. This book again, a dialogue. A lot of people really like this book. I think this may be my favorite book. Kind of a history of the world. Reading from the back, Being in Time is a metaphysical history of the world and existence. It explores some of the biggest philosophical questions, such as: does God exist? Why does evil exist? What is reality? What is death? And why is there anything at all? This is uniquely done through the use of dialogue by some of the greatest minds in the history of the world. The characters come to life in a hidden sanctuary of perfection located in the glass bead game at the house on the hill. All of them expand on the study of reality and existence through a unique philosophical system which glorifies the artistic self. So I've had a lot of fun writing these books. Again, all of them I've done in about 3-4 days of complete dedication to just non-stop typing, to the point that my hands hurt, and just a very free flow way of writing books, and then whatever comes out at the end of this. So you really put yourself in a transcendent state when you do something like this, where it's just non-stop. There's no outside world interfering, no negativity, no TVs on, no anything. You're kind of in this almost Zen-like state. And again, I don't do a lot of editing or anything. Just pretty much what comes out. And it's a dialogue of all the characters, and I become all the characters just from the table of contents in this. Kind of starts at the beginning of time, actually before time, where the gods have a dialogue and how the universe was started. And then second chapter was Worms Love to Dig, a point in history of time where worms were maggots, or one-celled amoebas were in a perfect existence because they weren't aware that they were going to die someday. So that was kind of an interesting thing that came out of that chapter. And it just went on all the way through history: a trip to Mount Everest, Alexander the Great, the crucifixion, the Colosseum, the Crusades, the Renaissance, the Age of Science, Auschwitz, getting into why does evil exist, and just again going on into mind, time, and space, and reality, and all these questions. And I'm really happy with this book. A lot of people really do enjoy and like that book, and maybe the best one of all. The fifth book was called The Journey to Qualia, which I collaborated with my son Tony Magna on. And again, this is available in all the bookstores, and you can Google it and buy ebooks very cheap for about $3. And this is dialogue again. This is 250 pages. And here's a picture of my son on the back. We were in Mexico, and we we've collaborated really on all these books, and have talked about all of these books. But this one in particular, my son and myself published together. And again, it's dialogue, and this one really gets hard-hitting, and it's kind of put in like a form of New Testament, Old Testament, and Revelation, kind of how the Bible was set up. And it is kind of like a modern-day Bible, but really hard-hitting, of questioning like God's qualities and why does evil exist, and this glorification of the glass bead game, and freedom, and artistic freedom. And this book is really outstanding. We did find almost all of the signatures of all the glass bead game members. I was able to find all the signatures, the real signatures, and I put that at the end of the book. It was kind of a neat thing that they signed off as glass bead game members to all the findings of the glass bead game, and the journey to qualia. And so this book is really, really fantastic as well. And oh, the cover, we had a painting made of about 8 or 10 of the glass bead game members. My tattoo artist did an actual painting, and I think I got a picture of the painting here. Here's a picture of the painting that we have, and that's very large. You probably can't see it that well. Parmenides, Beethoven, George Berkeley, Gandhi are some of the characters, Ayn Rand, and that is what we converted into the cover for the book. So that really turned out well. The last book is called The Divine Artist, Dreams, Poems, and the Mystical Trance of the Brahmin, again by Mark Megna. This is the last book I did. And this one, it has some dialogue in the beginning and some at the end, but it primarily is kind of this unique form of poetry, or just philosophical statements. Not necessarily that this book is meant to be read cover to cover straight through, although I have read it that way several times. But it almost, when you read this, it invokes self-contemplation about reality, heaven and earth, and life and death, and the nature of God, and so forth. And it kind of turned out good in that respect. And this was another book I wasn't that psyched how it turned out initially, but then the more I've been reading it, the more I've been liking it. That there's so much in these books that maybe they're not the most artistically put together or well written, but the ideas in these 6 books, I don't think you're going to find in any other books. They really get to the point quickly, and they don't dilly-dally around with stories or developing characters or whatever, because you already know all the characters, or a lot of people that study metaphysics would know the characters. And it really gets to hard-hitting philosophical, metaphysical questions, just constantly, one after another. And this book is 240 pages. It just keeps going and going and going, and continues to invoke these questions and the awe of the universe, and why is there anything at all, and so forth. So that was the whole series, the 6 books that I've written, and all these videos that I've done. Again, this is like my hobby. I call it the glass bead game here on the house on the hill.